What's going on, everybody? Welcome to episode 2 of the Browns Beat podcast. I'm Derek, and who might you be, sir?
I'm your man Tristan from Tristan Talks Browns, my YouTube channel. So, how you doing today, Derek?
I'm doing all right. But we'll get into it. So we started off with the last podcast talking a lot about Deshaun and the offense and stuff like that. So we want to kind of move on today and talk about some of the other moves that we have made, whether it be trade, free agency, whatever. And so we got a lot to get into. So we'll go ahead and start off with the Mack Wilson trade for Chase Winovich. First, Tristan, what was your thoughts on that trade?
Yeah, honestly, I really liked it. I thought that it was, with the uncertainty behind getting Takk McKinley back, with the uncertainty surrounding Jadeveon Clowney coming back, even though we feel like that's likely at this point, it's still like an unknown. So, I thought it was a good insurance signing because, Chase Winovich, he's not the worst player in the world to have lined up across from Myles Garrett if it came down to it. And for what we know about last season, we were constantly rotating Takk McKinley. We were constantly rotating Myles Garrett. We were constantly swapping out those edge rushers so that way they would stay fresh. So I feel like it was a good trade for us because it provided us depth at a very valuable position. And we gave up a player that, honestly, I thought was a potential guy to get cut at camp this year. And with the emergence of Jacob Phillips, who I like a lot, I like his potential. He needs to refine his game a bit, but I like his potential a lot more than Mack Wilson's. I certainly like what I'm seeing out of JOK, and I think we could potentially see John Johnson play more of a hybrid role. So I really saw it being like we traded away a guy who's going to be a special teamer for a guy who can step in and make impact plays. So I like it from that perspective.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I was pumped when I found out about this trade. So I actually woke up. I can't remember what time it happened, whether if it was in the morning or if I just fell asleep, on a nap. But I woke up and I didn't even see it, but somebody was saying about, buy Mack Wilson. And I was like, oh, what happened? Then I found out and I was like, wow, Andrew Berry pulled that off. So just in terms of the trade itself, Mack Wilson, I was really high on at one point. Didn't work out. It's unfortunate for him, for us. It's a position of need at linebacker. But what you're getting in return in Chase Winovich is a guy who does not give up on plays, has an absolute motor if I've ever seen one. Watching him play at Michigan as an Ohio State fan, I was more afraid of Chase Winovich than I was of Devin Bush. And you're getting a guy who is basically going to fill your Takk McKinley type role of a situational edge rusher, but he can also play linebacker. So in terms of the versatility that Joe Woods loves and Andrew Berry loves, he's a perfect fit. I don't see him being the number 2 to Myles, but that 3/4 is a perfect role for him. And on Jadeveon Clowney, I can say this. I do know that Clowney's doing his typical BS of just waiting a long time, which is no surprise, but
yeah, well, and I understand it. And I've said this if you guys are constantly on Brown Spaces and stuff, I've said this in Spaces before, especially with Jadeveon Clowney. I understand him holding out and trying to get as much money as he can. Because, that boy, he balled out in Houston, should have gotten his big payday there. They didn't pay him, so he went to Seattle. Seattle and Tennessee, they both have him playing in roles he just wasn't meant to play, and he had injury issues. So for him, I'm totally understanding when it comes to, wanting to wait and get the best money available for him. So that's just my perspective, though. You can have your own opinions, of course.
Yeah, and even if Clowney, I expect him to come back 100%. That's just my opinion. Not that I have anything for sure on Clowney that I can say, but I think at the end of the day, the market's going to run dry, and he's going to be the only one out there waiting, and Cleveland will ultimately be the best position for him. So there was that rumored offer of 2 years, $24 million, putting him at $12 per year. I think I think he's more so looking for long-term security. So we'll see what that 2 years, if that's enough to convince him versus, what he was on this year on the 1 year. So we'll see on Clowney, but they're definitely going to address edge outside of Chase Winovich. But again, I think in terms of, hey, you're giving up Mack Wilson for Chase Winovich, absolute steal, in my opinion.
Yeah, spot on. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Fantastic player. And moving over to the other position on the defensive line besides edge, D tackle with Taven Bryan. So we signed him on a 1 year, $5 million deal from Jacksonville. So for those of you who don't know that name, since he's not necessarily the biggest name in the world, Taven Bryan, he was, what year was he picked? 2018, I want to say. Yeah, 2018 first-round draft pick with the Jacksonville Jaguars, D tackle out of Florida. He, coming out of the draft, had a really good RAS score, relative athletic score, which for those of you who don't know what that is, it pretty much takes a bunch of your natural physical abilities, like your height, stuff like that, compares it to what you do as far as speed, agility, and explosiveness, and essentially get a grade. And his relative athletic scores were through the charts at Florida. So knowing what we know about the analytics community, which Andrew Berry is one of the pioneers of it, I don't want to say he is, but he's somebody who's leading the charge when it comes to it. RAS scores are huge, and that's why we brought him in. We brought him in because not only is D tackle seen as, not that big of a position with, as far as positional value goes, which is why we only brought him in on a 1 year, $5 million deal instead of paying, some of these other D tackles 3 years, $15 million a year. We brought him in because the positional need isn't as high, but we feel as though, or Andrew Berry feels as though we can maximize that value. And because he's on a 1 year deal, if he balls out here in Cleveland and then signs somewhere else, we can get a compensatory third round pick potentially if he really does well here. So, I like it. I'm not a huge fan of the $5 million. I think that's a little bit pricey for him. However, I do think for what the potential is, I think it makes sense. And I think that when we're talking about that position and what we needed this offseason, we were moving off from Malik Jackson, so we had to get another pass rushing D tackle in there, especially with the uncertainty of Malik McDowell. So I don't hate it. I just hope that we do a couple of other things to address the position as well.
Yep, I think that this makes a ton of sense on Andrew Berry's side of things. The one thing we've seen consistently throughout his entire time as the Cleveland Browns GM, you see a lot of these 1 year deals, and the common theme is it's guys who were really highly graded, who just kind of fall short on another team, which makes a ton of sense because when you think about it, even if the guys don't work out in the NFL, initially they were graded a certain way for a reason. So to take a chance on a guy like this makes a ton of sense. Browns aren't done at that position. They're going to keep looking elsewhere, whether it be draft, free agency, whatever. So just stay tuned on that. I know they like Tommy Togiai. I don't know that they're definitely not going to go into the year with Togiai and Bryant starting. I can't imagine that at all. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, yeah, and I mean, I also like Jordan Elliott. I mean, I had really high hopes for him when we first picked him up, coming out of the draft. With I think it was the same draft as Greedy, So I was really, really thrilled with the pick. I thought he had a lot of potential, and just hasn't panned out for him yet. And I'm not saying it can't happen. I'm not saying it won't happen, but it's certainly looking unlikely that he's gonna have a big role here in Cleveland. So I hope we bring in more competition for the position.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Jordan Elliott was somebody who I really, really liked. I liked that pick a lot. I think he was a year ahead of that, though. I think he was in the Delpit draft, if I'm not mistaken. Because, it was him, Delpit, and Phillips, I want to say, was in that draft.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you could say there's still time, but we're not going to wait. I think, what they've already seen out of Tommy Togiai, they like him more. I wouldn't be surprised if Jordan Elliott was cut, to be honest with you. just because, like I said, they're going to bring other guys in, whether it be starters or competition. They're going to do their due diligence there. But switching to the other side of the football, one guy we have not talked about is Jakeem Grant, who is a Pro Bowl kick returner. We were talking about wide receiver prior to the signing, and then it came across, hey, we signed a receiver. Not who I was expecting, but Jakeem Grant is somebody that I like. I think it's going to be interesting to see how much we actually utilize him within the offense itself. Obviously he's going to be your kick returner, probably punt returner as well, which, as much as I love DPJ, much rather would see Jakeem Grant doing that role, and don't like Anthony Schwartz in general, so I would much rather have Jakeem Grant doing that role. But Tristan, what was your thoughts on that signing?
Why you're so down on Anthony Schwartz, man? Yeah, no, I get it though. He's got a lot of fine tuning to do. But as far as Jakeem Grant goes, I really like the deal. I feel like, the special teams last year was not great at all. Obviously you had your kicker and punter issues, but the return game, it felt like every kick return, punt return was the same thing on repeat. Like the punt returns, you'd see a punt go, you'd see our punt returner catch it, he'd run out, make a little move, not get anybody to miss, and get tackled. It was the same thing every time. And, it was, I don't remember any big plays coming out of our punt return and kick return this year. So, when you add somebody who's explosive like that, it's, we talk about what makes the quarterback's job easier. What makes the quarterback's life easier? And it's constantly having a defense that can get them the ball more frequently. Having that offensive line protect them, having the receivers go out, catch the ball, having the run game to make the passing game open up. But one of the underrated things about, making quarterback's life easier is having good field positioning to start off your drives. It's something where it's very much overlooked by a lot of people. But Aaron Rodgers wishes that his special teams unit was better last year. They would have advanced around the playoffs, So it's I like it because it's giving us another threat in a different phase of the game that we don't have threats in. So I really like it. And like you were saying, I like DPJ, not as a punt or kick returner. He's got his role, and it would be a shame if he got hurt on punting or kick returns, when that's not his bread and butter. This is what Jakeem Grant does. He's a punt returner. He's electrifying at that position, and I think he'll be a great signing for us.
Yeah, now I want to ask you this, just because I think a lot of people aren't realizing this. Who's going to get cut? Anthony Schwartz? Demetric Felton?
I think it probably could be Felton. Just my gut feeling is telling me it's probably Felton. I really like him a lot, and I think he's a great pick. However, I think that what the Browns are going to see is, listen, we invested a 3rd-round pick in Anthony Schwartz. We invested a 6th-round pick in Demetric Felton.
Yeah.
And I think they're very similar style. Like, I don't want to say similar style players, but they're very similar in their skill sets.
Mm-hmm.
So I just think that the Browns would be more willing to take a 1-year bet on Anthony Schwartz, one more year bet on Anthony Schwartz, and hoping that he can improve his route running and potentially fill in that slot role. I think is what we're looking for, either having him in the slot or having him as a burner on the outside. Giving him 1 more year versus, it feels like Demetric Felton with him, the ceiling is at a certain point. But regardless, if there's a way we can keep them both, I'd love to keep them both. Just how realistic is it? I don't know.
Yeah, it really sucks. It's like a couple years ago, we were talking about these guys in camp and, preseason and how well they were doing. And it's like, well, unfortunately, you can't keep everybody. I do think it is interesting because I'm 100% expecting Will Fuller at some point. Just in the fact that Anthony Schwartz and Will Fuller are similar, but Fuller's obviously way ahead at this point. I think it's interesting. Are they going to think that Anthony Schwartz is going to be the long-term Will Fuller? I don't know. I can tell you this, I'll be massively disappointed if Demetric Felton gets cut, because we saw flashes last year, and I think that guy can be really, really good. So if he gets cut, I would not be surprised if he becomes a good player. Now, I will say this, as far as the receivers go, as far as the Landry stuff, there's still mutual interest that's been reported. But I can tell you, don't expect anything as far as anything new, at least until Kevin Stefanski gets back from the coaches NFL meeting. That's what I've been told. And I don't know if I can say that, but I think it's common sense enough that I probably can say it. So we'll see. It'll be interesting, because there could be a scenario where we do have Fuller and Landry. There could also be a scenario where it's just Landry or it's just Fuller. I know Jarvis's agent came out and said that Cleveland's his home. So that's a really good sign, given the fact that he did fire his previous agent. So we'll have to see. We'll have to just see where that goes. But you got any thoughts on that, on the Landry stuff? What do you expect with that?
Yeah, so I was sad when we first cut him, but I understood it. The big thing for me is, I would love to bring back Landry from the perspective of he's a great leader. I fell in love with him here because he's a great person, great leader. He's everything that we've really wanted other Browns players to be, because, and again, this is an issue that happens when you're, this is the cost of being a good team. So you're going to have to cut and, get rid of really good players, but you have to do it because you have to win. And, it's a problem that, we've had here in Cleveland for a while. It's we haven't been able to get the talent here, so we haven't really seen, we haven't really had this issue to deal with, so it's weird because now it's like, at the receiver position, we've got so much youth and so much potential. It's like, last year's Kathero Hodge, I felt terrible when we cut him because I was like, he's a talented player, but it is what it is. You have to live with it. But when we're talking in particular about Jarvis, just personally, I think Will Fuller fits more of what we're looking to do. I think that Jarvis's skill set, if we're leaving out Jarvis the player, leaving out Jarvis the person and just talking about him from a football standpoint, it doesn't make sense for us to bring him back, in my opinion. I think that Will Fuller would offer a new style, a new dynamic from that slot position, and he has previous experience working with Deshaun Watson. I just think that's, if you're going to add somebody for that position, it's got to be Will Fuller. That's it for me.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, it's going to come down to money. What does Landry want in the end? I don't believe that $20 million, especially after what his agent said. And him firing his agent, to me, is a telltale sign. Sounds like somebody who was like, hey, look at Christian Kirk. You're better than Christian Kirk. You know what I mean? So we'll see with that. On Will Fuller, I definitely agree. And I think the only reason why Will Fuller went to Miami is because Deshaun was probably saying, hey, I'm going to Miami. That at that time, it was the most likely place, and it just didn't work out. So, everybody's been saying they're connected. I would certainly love them both. But like we talked about, there's really just not all this room in the world. Plus, we'll use our receivers more, but how much more is kind of the question. I can't see them using receivers more to the point where they're going to keep a ton, so we'll just have to wait and see on that. But as far as Landry, I think he would be great to bring back as far as locker room. You're dealing with controversy, you're dealing with all this stuff. I think having a guy like that would be great, but you can't put everything on a locker room guy. You still need something on the field. So again, just going to come back to numbers, but so you want to go ahead and hit what's next on our list, because I forgot.
You're good. So we should probably move on to a couple of the guys that we saw head out besides Landry, before we really started kicking off our free agency, before we got to Deshaun Watson. So I'm talking about Austin Hooper, and I'm talking about JC Tretter. I'll start off by saying with JC Tretter. With JC Tretter, I'm going to miss him. He was here before it all happened, sort of similar to Joel Bitonio. but Joel Bitonio's been here longer than him, but it's just, he was great guy, great leader in the locker room. Was an integral part to our offensive line, integral part to our killer run game. We're definitely going to miss him at points this next year, where it's going to be like, either Nick Harris or I forgot the guy who we signed today. I apologize, but either, one of those two guys will have a bad game. We'll be like, miss the consistency of Tretter. But one of the issues with Tretter was he was never at practice during the season. He would always sit out for, making sure he's preserving his body for the games and stuff. So, in that way, it was probably just something that annoyed the coaching staff. But, regardless, we needed the cap space in order to make the Deshaun Watson move happen and have flexibility to make other acquisitions. Nick Harris, I mean, honestly, this is a big compliment to Nick Harris with moving off of J.C. Tretter, because he's a Pro Bowl caliber center, and he's a quality teammate. You don't move off of guys like that unless you have somebody else you feel like you can fall back on. And I don't view the guy that we brought in today from Seattle, the center, I don't view him as like, we don't trust Nick Harris. I view that as, listen, we believe Nick Harris is going to be good, but we're going to just be extra sure here and get somebody that we know can probably come in and step in and do a job. And if we have any injuries on the offensive line, we saw it all last year. For me, the biggest part with the injuries was Chris Hubbard when he went down. It was tragic for us because he's so good as a swing tackle that it goes under the radar.
Yeah.
And we just don't think about it as fans. But last year it really showed that we needed it.
Yeah, JC, it sucks to lose guys like that. Like you said, a guy who's been in this locker room for a long time, been through some stuff here. But with that being said, I will say this. One of the most valuable things in losing JC is, or I should say not valuable things in losing JC Tretter, is him being the president of the NFLPA. I think it's big to have on your team. And now that he's no longer on our team, it's a bit interesting. Not that matters a ton, but I think in terms of what the league is thinking, to have a guy like that. But as far as Nick Harris, listen, this is a guy who fits Kevin Stefanski perfectly. He's somebody who is sure he might be undersized, but he can get to the next level. He's really good in terms of the run defense. In the Packers game this year, he held his own blocking, even as a passer, which was kind of my worry at his size. So after seeing that, I 100% second this move, to make Nick Harris your guy. I believe Bill Callahan is certainly the guy you want getting these younger players ready. This could be something we see with James Hudson later. So I think the center we brought in today from Seattle, whose name I also do not know, I agree. He's not a starter, even though he started for Seattle. It's a guy who's 26. He's in on a cheap deal. Have him for security. This offensive line is the most critical part to this, entire team, really, just because so much is based off the run game. So it makes a ton of sense. But like I said, JC sucks, but he'll go somewhere and he'll be successful on another team. So, but I'm excited. I'm excited about Nick Harris being the center just because of his athleticism, and his skill set that made the Browns say, hey, you're perfect for us. We're perfect for you. Let's get this, let's draft you. So I'm excited.
Yeah, absolutely. And, this will be, outside of Donovan Peoples-Jones, this will be like one of the first times we see one of Andrew Barry's later round picks evolving into a starter. And, when you're talking about those late round picks, this is what you hope for. You hope that those guys over a few years will be able to be ready to start for you for, a few years. That's what we hope for. And, I'm hoping that Nick Harris can do it, and I hope he can do it at a really good rate. And, I'm hopeful, but, it does suck to lose J.C. Tretter. Now, all the nice things I said about J.C. Tretter, I will take those away if he signs with the Bengals, because I'm not about that. I'm not about that. So, no, but I guess not. While we're talking about the offensive line, we probably should talk about re-signing Chris Hubbard, because I feel it's a very good move. I think that with the injury woes that Jedrick Wills has had throughout his career so far, with Jack Conklin having that very, very bad season with injuries last year, I feel as though it was necessary to be able to retain him because he knows what we're trying to do on offense. He's been in our system. He's worked with Bill Callahan. And whenever he's had to step in to kind of fill in that swing tackle role or not necessarily being the every down guy, but being able to fill in with guys who are hurt, at tackle and guard, he did really well with it. He did really, really well with it. So I'm really excited that we're re-signing him to keep stability. Blake Hance, I view him as, a solid offensive lineman, but he's not as good as Chris Hubbard at tackle. I like Blake Hance at guard,
Same.
but not tackle. So, the way I see it, you've got a backup at tackle, guard, and center that you can rely on to come in and do a job if there's any injuries, which we absolutely needed last year. And unfortunately, with his injury last year, we couldn't rely on it. So I like it. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'll push back on this sense. The only thing I'm concerned about, Chris Hubbard, I forgot his name for 2 seconds. The only thing I'm concerned about Chris Hubbard with is just now that he's getting older and the injuries have somewhat piled up. I'm concerned with that as a backup. But in terms of a player, to me, he's like one of the most perfect swing tackle, guard, fill-in guys that you can have for a couple games. Now, you don't want him the whole year. And that's not disrespect to him. It's just at this point in his career, it's just where he's at. I've talked with Chris a couple times, messaging. He's a great dude. Like him a lot as far as a locker room guy. Happy to have him back, but I am a bit concerned with the injuries, especially now that Jack Conklin's coming off of his major injury, even though he's ahead of schedule. Just having two guys with injury histories, kind of playing off of each other, along with Jedrick Wills, who's dealt with his own stuff. It's a little interesting. I'm not saying that by any means all of them are going to get hurt and you'll be screwed. That's not what I'm saying. But I would prefer almost that they have a guy, you know what I mean, whether it be a draft or whatever. And again, they like James Hudson. He could continue to develop, but I've not seen enough out of him to make me comfortable. Blake Hance, I 100% agree. I love him at guard. If any one of our guys get hurt, knock on wood, I'm completely comfortable with Blake Hance. I mean, he did a heck of a job filling in, and he had to fill in a ton at a bunch of different positions. And as an offensive lineman, that is not easy to do. Your footwork, your technique, everything changes at each position you play. So yeah, I was impressed with him, but back to the point, Chris Hubbard, happy to have him back. Just hope he can stay healthy and get back to 100%. So
yeah, I'm right there with you. But I guess we should probably move back to the other side of the ball. Talk about our linebacker position, Anthony Walker, bringing him back on a 1-year deal. I like it. I thought, our run defense last year was actually pretty solid. I really didn't see teams running down our throat like other previous years, and it was nice. And I think it was the inclusion of JOK with his side-to-side ability to run from sideline to sideline and pretty much eliminate any type of run to the outside, and obviously with the addition of Clowney helped out with our run game big time, which is part of the other reason why I wanted to bring it back. Mm-hmm. But I also felt Anthony Walker, as the season went on, I felt like he started to get better and better.
Yep.
And I felt as though, he was one of the pieces that brought the team together from a communication standpoint. I can't remember exactly, but was he our green dot last year?
Yeah. So
he was the
green dot. And then I want to say when he was hurt, it was Johnson, if I'm correct. Or maybe it was Phillips. Johnson. I can't remember, but yeah, he definitely did at some point.
Yeah. It wasn't Phillips because Phillips came in towards the end of last year.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. But yeah, no, and I thought he did a solid job. And the way I see it, it's insurance. We now have more depth at linebacker with him coming back, and we have somebody that we know what he can do and we know works. So I don't mind it. I don't mind it's on a 1-year deal. I like it. So it just provides more stability and in case of injury, which we dealt with a lot last year. it provides us with more stability. So what are your thoughts, Theo?
Yeah, I like Anthony Walker. I really loved the signing last year in free agency just because you're getting a guy who is really, really good in Indy next to Darius Leonard. But I like him here at this point more for the fact of our linebacker room is so incredibly young,
Yeah,
right? And that's what makes us a great team looking towards the future. All these guys are really young, but for right now, it's kind of difficult because you really need a guy like an Anthony Walker to kind of head up that room, but also be a depth piece, a rotation guy. We don't play a whole lot of three linebackers, and I think it's going to be even less this year. So it's just more of really a captain type thing for me that I like it. I like his skill set. Um, but I really, really, really hope that we see a lot of JOK and Jacob Phillips. If I had my choice, if I was the coach, that would be my primary linebackers, just because of the versatility of those guys, and just everything that they can bring. But players get injured, and to have a backup plan, slash rotation starter in Anthony Walker, it's a great fit, and I like it a lot. I like what he can bring.
yeah, I'm right there with you. I think it's a good fit. It's a good fit for everybody involved. I think
Mm-hmm.
Anthony Walker, he's in a role here where he's not necessarily relied upon, but he's able to help influence in a positive way. So I really like that. Um, but I guess we're still in free agency. A lot of stuff has kind of died down. Uh, but what are some other positions that you want us to attack? What are some other positions you feel heading into the draft we absolutely need to add either more depth or we need to add a starting caliber, pardon me, starting caliber player? What positions and such?
So I think they might be obvious, but my order would be, well, okay. I'm gonna pencil in Clowney coming back. So
Okay.
that's why I'm gonna have this at like third. So keep that in mind. I know edge is an important position, but
Mm.
just because I personally believe he's coming back, I'm gonna put it at third. My first, and I'm gonna keep pounding the table, wide receiver. And I know we talked about it earlier. I expect us to sign somebody and draft somebody. And I can tell you this, um, the Browns do like a wide receiver or two, and there's a chance that they don't stay at 44. And this is something I kind of been saying before, I kind of got that information. It just makes too much sense. You don't go out and get Deshaun Watson for 5 years and guarantee all that money to have a wide receiver room, that you're not sure he's going to have guys long term with. And as far as that, I would just say pay attention to guys who could slide. That's all I can say there. But as far as the others, I would really like safety. Now that Peppers is off the table, unfortunately, of course, Michigan guy would betray us. Just saying. But I think safety, just because it's so incredibly important to this defense, playing that three corner or let me rephrase that three nickel defense, whether it be corners or safeties on the field. I personally love, having having Troy Hill playing that slot role, and Denzel and Newsome on the outside, and Greedy you can rotate in there and have Newsome play inside. I love the flexibility there, but I would also love if we went out and got a guy like we hoped, in Ronnie Harrison, a guy who can play more of a free. Well, I guess they didn't hope that in Harrison, but you get what I'm saying. One of these guys who still has a lot in him could turn out to be really good, because John Johnson and Grant Delpit are both great safeties, but we need to use them right. We need to have Johnson up in the box. If you go back and you look at his Rams success, the reason why we paid him what we did is because he was essentially another linebacker, just faster. You know what I'm saying? So if you can free up Delpit to kind of play that flex role, that hybrid safety role, because he's also great coming off the edge on blitzes. We saw that last year, saw that in college, but nobody wanted to believe me when I said, look at that. He's going to be good at that. So my personal opinion is I would love to see them go out and get a safety that would free up both Delpit and John Johnson.
just so you can do that much more.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think, and when we first got Joe Woods, we were talking about, what type of defense are we going to expect? Like going into this previous season, we were expecting a lot of 3 high safety looks, 5 DBs on the field. Like that's what we were expecting. And I feel like he tried to do that the first few weeks of the season. And as the season kind of progressed, I saw less and less of Ronnie Harrison on the field. And, I felt as though our team was better. This is not a shot against Ronnie Harrison. I just think for the role that we wanted him to fill, he just wasn't good enough for that role. I feel like if he had a different role in our defense, I think he probably would have been good. But, we need to get, you're absolutely spot on. We need to get that safety that is very, very reliable in coverage, that we can trust to stick back there, and he can essentially allow our defense to be flexible and not one dimension. That's what I'm looking for. I also think receiver is an important position. I also really think D tackle. I don't think that with the current guys that we have on the roster, Taven Bryan, I'm optimistic. Tommy Togiai, I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic that those guys can become good, but they're not guarantees. We need a guarantee. We need a guy who we can trust on, whether it's Sheldon Richardson, whether it's Danny Shelton, bringing him back, whether it's anybody, right? We need somebody that we can rely on at that position. And I know it's a deep draft class at that spot, but I'm just not sold that we're gonna stay with our pick, and I'm not sold that the guys that we want are going to fall to us.
Yeah, and I'll say this on the D tackle front: pay attention to the 2 Chicago boys. I think the longer free agency goes on, I would expect Akeem Hicks to be signed first. That just makes a ton of sense given how great of a player he's been. So pay attention to that. But also, I think Eddie Goldman, I know he's a little bit older, if I'm correct, but I like him a lot. I think that he would be a guy who wouldn't be as dominant necessarily, but he could come in and play a pretty good role, be a good starter. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, absolutely. He'd be a great complementary piece, and for what our defensive line did last year with the 2 D tackles we had, who weren't terrible by any means of the imagination, but they weren't good. They were kind of just average, I would say, for what our defensive line was able to do with just 2 average guys at that position. Imagine what happens if we go out and get somebody who's above average, who's good to great, that would be awesome.
We need a Malik McDowell without the running naked in front of children. That's what we need.
That'd be great, but I mean, but looking forward to the draft, right? What, I guess, who's a prospect you like? I'll say that. Name one prospect you like, and then name some positions you think that we should be attacking in the draft.
I'll answer your second question first. I think receiver, safety, D-line. I wouldn't be surprised if we went out and added another linebacker, just because Sione Takitaki, I think they're still kind of unsure about him. I think they view him more as a situational special teams type guy. So we'll have to see that. I wouldn't be surprised if in the 4th, 5th round, somewhere like that, they take a flyer on one of these linebackers who might fall. Say that again. I completely forgot what you're saying.
Yeah. So the first question was,
player.
Name a prospect. Name a player that you like.
I'll name you a couple. I'll say, if it's just me, I'll say that if Jamison Williams or Chris Olave falls into the mid-20s, I don't care. I'm trading up. Yeah. That's me. I'm doing it. I like George Pickens. I still like Treylon Burks, even though he had a horrible combine. I think that him as a wide receiver 2, 3, kind of give him time to develop would be good. So those would be the players that I like, that I would move up for. I will say this. The one guy that's not mentioned that I like as far as a potential slide to us kind of guy is Why did I forget his name as soon as I was about to say it? This always happens.
Christian Watson?
Nope, DeMarvin Leal. That's who it is.
Oh, okay.
He's somebody who at Texas A&M, really a flex guy, played inside at D tackle, played outside at edge. I think he fits our versatility, type theme that we go with as far as picking guys. So if the guys that they like don't fall to a spot that they're comfortable with, I could see them taking a flyer on somebody like that. I also personally like Sky Moore. I think he'd fit our offense great.
Okay. Yeah. So for me personally, I and I might be, just me in this position. I don't think the Browns are going to attack wide receiver in the draft. I think we got a lot of young guys on the roster that we still need to see more from. Before I think we should probably attack that role, especially if we sign Will Fuller. I will say this. I personally think we should be attacking D-line in this draft. I think there's a lot of quality D tackles that are going to fall. Devontae Wyatt, I'm looking at for our second round pick.
He would be incredible. I think he's better than Jordan Davis at a lot of things. And I think people are overlooking that as far as why Jordan was so successful.
Exactly. And then the other thing, and if he's there at our second round pick, Trey McBride, tight end out of Colorado State. If you put this guy's tape on.
Do we have 2 second rounders? I thought we did.
Yeah, we do. We do. At least, or is it 2 third rounders?
I think it's 2 it's 2/3.
2/3. Okay. Well, regardless, if he's there with our first pick in the third round, which I doubt he will be, I think he potentially could fall up. Not fall, but I think he could potentially go as high as the first round because I just look at him and I say, man, he is a well-rounded prospect. And with us moving off of Hooper, which we forgot to talk about Hooper as well. Yeah. So we'll circle back to that. But with us moving off of Hooper, and I like the idea of getting Njoku the ball more. Harrison Bryant, with the limited snaps he's had, he's looked good. But if you could potentially get a guy like Trey McBride in there, that trio would just be unbelievable.
I couldn't agree more. I think Trey McBride is going to be an absolute stud. He looks like the Iowa tight ends, right? You're talking about Noah Fant, TJ Hawkinson, kind of that perfect mix of everything. Now, Fant's more of a receiving tight end, but I mean, he can do it all. I think he's going to be a beast.
Yeah, which is why I really want us to grab him, especially if we're going to be prioritizing our 2 tight end systems still, which that will be interesting to see what offensive pieces we attack in the later rounds of the draft, because I can imagine Kevin Stefanski really changing up how he does his offense with Deshaun Watson now coming in. And I think it's going to be an interesting draft. I think that the Browns are in a position where they might not even take picks for need. They might just say he's the best player available, let's grab him. So we could be sitting here and they draft a running back or something in the third round, and we'd be saying why did they do that? It's because he was the best player available. So I doubt it coming from the Berry camp. Maybe a corner, right? That would be the most
shout out to
pick
Marcus.
I could see. yeah, no kidding, right? So, but it's just there's a lot of different ways we can go in this draft that I think could really help the Browns out, and I really do think that there's some of these D tackles that are really going to fall, which is why I'm kind of scared about us trading up to draft a guy. It's just because there's so many talented players in this draft. And this is one of those drafts where it's the middle, the day 2 picks are going to be just as good as the day 1 picks, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. And to your point about tight end, one thing that I will say I'm very interested in, they're going to get a third tight end. Knowing what we know about Kevin Stefanski, they're not going to go into the season with just 2. Now, my question is, because I think Kyle Rudolph is a possibility just given the familiarity. If they love the young tight ends they got, Njoku and Bryant, they might go with an older vet. If they go the draft route, I think it'll be interesting because a guy that I love as a more receiving tight end is Isaiah Likely. I think he would be great in terms of using your tight end position to stretch the field. I don't love him as a blocker necessarily, but if they go towards their more traditional style tight end that they love, and it's not just because I go to Ohio State that I'm saying this, but Jeremy Ruckert is a very, very underrated tight end. People look at the numbers. Bott's a big numbers guy, and he constantly talks about Jeremy Rucker and the whole I forget what it was, like his production. Anyway, something to do with numbers. My theory on that with Jeremy Rucker is I can't look at the numbers because I know who he played with. He's a very underrated blocker. And in the limited targets that he does get, 9 times out of 10, at least from my perspective watching it, he does good things. So if Kevin Stefanski, if they're looking for that tight end that can block but also be a solid receiving threat, I think he makes a lot of sense. I just don't know where he gets picked. But again, if they want to go towards the receiver type tight end route, give me Isaiah Likely all day long. I like him a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a bunch of different places we can go in this year's draft as far as talent evaluation with addressing that third tight end role. And it will be interesting to see, do we go for a guy who's more so on the blocking side? Do we go for a guy that's more so on the receiving side? It's going to be interesting. And I like our options. I like the potential options that we could potentially get there. But while we're on the tight end room, I did just mention this a little bit earlier. Probably should talk about Austin Hooper departing. It's really, when we talk about Andrew Berry, his time here, we talk about how great he's done and everything like that. And he's done an amazing job. I don't think anybody's going to debate that. However, we do look at, what are the potential stains that we could take a look at? Well, I would say, not getting Odell Beckham Jr. out of here quicker when he requested the first trade, that could be viewed as a stain. And the other one is obviously Austin Hooper, with us signing him to that big deal. It was the first signing of free agency. I remember, when we first signed him, it was free agency started. Austin Hooper is going to the Browns. Whoa, it was like that, so it was a great day because it was like, wow, Austin Hooper's a solid tight end, and he just hasn't worked out here. Regardless, though, I will say it is impressive that after 2 years, Andrew Berry can get out from underneath his contract and find cap space there. So that's a great job by him with structuring that contract in a way that, really gave us flexibility. It's sad they didn't work out because I was really hopeful when we first got him, but quite simply, the guy couldn't catch a ball. And, the amount of times he was in a position to make a really great play for the team and he didn't, it's sad. And, like I said, I was really high on him when we first got him. I thought, in reality, he should have worked out here.
Oh, yeah.
He was a great dual threat guy. He was a great receiver in Atlanta. He was a good blocker. It was supposed to work out. I will give Andrew Berry the benefit of the doubt when it comes to his contract and signing him, just because it made a lot of sense at the time. But it is sad to see him go just because I thought he would have a lot better of a career here than he ended up having.
Yeah, I can't fault Andrew Berry for the signing. My reasoning why I think it didn't work out, I think it's just our offense isn't the best fit for him, which is interesting because he signed to Tennessee with a similar offense. I think Hooper's more of a tight end where you have everything spread out. You can kind of get him open in a zone, but when you put him in situations where he's more, covered man and you have to make a special catch, if you want to call it that, you know what I mean? Where you're going to have to beat somebody with speed or your route running, which is pretty much what we were hoping for, I guess, with this offense with him. And just didn't work out. I was very disappointed. Like you said, I thought he was going to be somebody who comes in, has very sure hands, catches everything. Not that he's going to be elite in terms of the athleticism or anything like that, but I thought a complimentary guy to David Njoku, I thought that would work, and it didn't. And sure, 4 years, $40 million was a lot at the time, but it's really hard to fault Andrew Berry when you have a guy coming off as hot as he was when we got him. I would have probably made that move too, if I'm being honest. And I've even talked about it. I thought Austin Hooper was going to be really the key of this offense that opens everything up, just because I thought he would be that reliable guy, but he wasn't. We're moving on. Good luck to him in Tennessee. He seems like a nice guy by all accounts.
Yeah, absolutely.
But just didn't work out.
Exactly, and that's exactly it. He, from everything we've seen and everything like that, he seems like a nice guy. Wish him the best in Tennessee. Really hope he can, find his footing there. Unlike what he could do here. You know, it's just, it sucks because it's like, I had such high expectations for the guy.
Yeah.
Just couldn't meet him. So.
Yeah.
But with that, any other topics you wanted to cover today? Yeah.
No, but I will say, just wrapping up, like I said, the Browns are, they're making moves now that the Deshaun Watson presser and that kind of stuff is somewhat moved on. Obviously, it's never going to fully move on, but in terms of next steps as an organization, they're now on to looking at free agents. Like I said, and I'm not going to give anything away, but stay tuned. It's like the center we signed today. It was just like, expect some of those moves. I would say expect another pretty decently big one, I would say. And it doesn't mean it has to be the guy that I know, about with us, but just in general, the positions of need: receiver, D tackle, edge, safety. Look at those positions, kind of see who's out there. We're going to address some needs, and as well as the draft. So we still got a long ways to go, even though free agency hasn't, or I should say has been going on for a while now. By no means doesn't mean, anything's over. There's still a ton of great players out there. So we'll see on that. But with that being said, guys, that is episode 2 of the Browns Beat podcast. Tristan, go ahead and plug your socials so the people can find you.
Yep. So as you can see with my 2 banners right here. So these are the 2 platforms you can find me on. So Twitter, I shouldn't say I'm very active, not as active as DF, but I'm fairly active. So feel free to follow me on Twitter, Tristan Talks Clee, CLE, I should say. YouTube, Tristan Talks Browns. I haven't uploaded my first video yet. I am working on it, and I guess to drop a little bit of a teaser, the premise of it is surrounding Baker Mayfield. So it's going to be a deep dive evaluation, and it's going to talk about why he didn't work out here. So if you want my thoughts on that in a deeper perspective, feel free to subscribe to my channel, click the notification bell, and when that first video pops up, you'll be able to see it happen.
Yep.
You'll be able to see my thoughts.
Yep. So you can do the same here. Follow the channel. Let us know your thoughts on this video. You can also go follow the FDN network, whether it be on Twitter. The YouTube channel is coming soon. I may or may not be responsible for that, and I'm trying to work on it. So we're getting there. But that'll be up soon. Follow the FDN podcast. Also, all the links will be in the description and whatnot. And also, if you love a bunch of clowns talking about the Browns, that rhymed. Don't hate the player, hate the game. Browns After Dark. Browns After Dark on YouTube. We don't really have a schedule. It's just kind of random, but stop in. You'll have a good time. So with that being said, everybody, thanks for watching. Let us know your thoughts, and we'll see you in the next one. Have a good one.